When you arrive at Summer Street, can you tell us a little bit about what you see as you drive up?
Yep. So it was 10, I want to say 10:40, maybe 11. It could be even later than that. So it was dark. It was very cold. It was kind of spitting snow. It had snowed a little bit that day too. There was a couple of different police cruisers that were in the roadway of Summer Street facing out of town. Like if you're familiar with I know you guys did a kind of a walkthrough area, but away from the police department towards heading towards Eastern Ave. They're facing that way as if they were responding to the call in the roadway, and then there was some yellow caution tape kind of wrapped around some of those cruisers over to a telephone pole to kind of preserve what was believed to be the entire scene.
So after you arrive, you kind of take this scene in. What is your first step in investigation, evidence processing, scene management? What's kind of the first thing you do as you get out of your cruiser?
Yep. So once I meet with whoever was there, so it was Lieutenant Hurley was kind of on scene to point outside the caution tape what they might have seen. I start taking initial photographs. The reason being is I don't want it, anytime I go into a scene, I could introduce either contamination, I could kick something over or anything. So I try to take as much overall photos that show the big picture before we start to go into that scene and look more.
Would you recognize some of those photos if we showed them to you today?
I would.
Your Honor, may I approach? Thank you. Great.
Right, these are full.
These are exhibits 16, 17, and 18.
Very good.
Danny, I'm showing you what has been already admitted to exhibit 16, 17, and 18. Would you mind taking a look at those pictures and telling us what you see?
Yep, so 16, 17, and 18 appear to be the roadway that would have been in front of 41 Summer Street. And some of these are pictures that I believe an officer must have either taken or body cam before.
Is this visuals depicted in these pictures? Are they familiar to you having arrived on the scene before?
The physical layout and the blood on the ground, yes. When I arrived, EMTs had already left the scene as well.
Is this accurate for how the scene appeared minus the EMTs in the corner?
Yes.
Is the blood on the street accurate to how it appeared to you?
Yes.
Is the snow on the street accurate to how it appeared to you?
Yes.
Your Honor, thank you. Again, I believe you've already been told, but you will have copies of these in your deliberation room. Detective Danny, aside from taking pictures when you arrived on the scene and general observation, did you do anything else regarding evidence collection when you arrived?
Yep. So after taking initial photographs, we started to search the scene for pieces of evidence. I had previously been pointed out by the lieutenant, hey, there's shell casings that they had located with a flashlight. And so from there, we put placards, which is the yellow marker. You might see a number on it. I started with 5 because that's what I had. So we have to go, I believe it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I put a placard by that piece of evidence so that I know not to step on it, as well as to take a photo widescreen so that you can see all those placards and be like, okay, what was placard number 7? And you look and see what that was. And then I'd also take a mid-range and then a close-up of placard, say number 7, with whatever piece that evidence was.
Once you photograph the location of these shell casings, actually I'm going to back up a little bit. Can you just clarify for everyone so we're all on the same page what a shell casing is?
Yep. So with a firearm, you have a shell casing that is enclosed. I'm not by any means a firearms expert or anything, but you have a shell casing, usually brass, metal, that is enclosed with some gunpowder as well as other materials, and then a projectile, usually a lead bullet. And so when a firearm, shoots, it extracts that shell casing after that explosion goes off and a projectile goes out the barrel of the firearm, and the shell casing will get ejected. Depending on the type of handgun it is. If it's a revolver, obviously it stays inside, but a automatic, like a handgun, it would extract shooting off.
So we're going to focus on these shell casings for a little bit. Once you photographed where they were and you marked them with the placards, what are kind of your next steps specifically regarding evidence collection for these shell casings? How do you preserve those?
So you said after photographing? So 6 shell casings were located on the ground. After they were photographed close range so you can see, they would be individually taken wearing gloves, put them into a paper envelope, packaged separately.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Counsel, this is states 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, sorry. Detective Daney, is this the type of envelope that it would be put in?
Yes.
At the time? If I were to show you these envelopes and hand them to you, would be able to determine whether or not these shell casings, shell casings in question?
Yes.
Without.
So I'm just looking for the evidence label, Rochester Police Department. Like this one says 9mm Luger shell casing, placard number 10. So I remember that's placard number 10. This is evidence tape. I have my signature and the date that it was signed, making sure that it wasn't reopened or anything like that.
So even without opening those envelopes, are you able to confidently attest that those are shell casings you retrieved?
These are the shell casings I collected.
Your Honor, I do move for these shell casings to be admitted as full exhibits. These are states 13, 14, sorry, overrunning 13, 14, 12, 9, 10, 11. That are currently marked for ID.
That's without objection.
No objection. So exhibits 9 through 14 are full exhibits.
Detective Daney, I'm just going to open these for simplicity's sake. Doesn't matter.
What out?
Whatever.
Would you like me to take the shell casing out? Each one?
One is fine. Your Honor, permission to publish it there.
Your Honor, this would be placard number 10, which is, ID number exhibit 14. So each one of these probably should be in one of these smaller ones, just because that's what I had on scene that was loaded into here. It's also got the number 10 on it for placard.
The labeling both on the 700 rule officers use the correct placard.
Yeah, exactly. So if we have a ton of placards out there, we want to make sure the picture I take and the shell casing I seize and the envelope I put in, I need label number 10 so that when I have, say, 30 shell casings, I can really say this is that one, and that one was located here. Like that. Yeah.
This is one. To your recollection, were they all of this nature?
Yes, they were.
What does that indicate to you as an officer?
That the, I'm sorry.
That they were all essentially identical shell casings. That indicated
That it came from the same type of gun. Often too, we don't see a whole lot of people loading different types of ammunition into a gun. It's all the same type of ammunition, so it could lead me to believe that it probably came from a same type of gun, but the fact that it's all 9mm definitely came from a 9mm handgun.
Were shell casings the only piece of evidence that you collected from the scene that night?
It was not.
Can you tell us what else you collected from the scene?
Yep. So in the area where there's the trail of blood in front of the driveway, right around there, 41, Mr. Levesque's residence, there was a black holster for a handgun.
I'm going to pause you there. Would you recognize that holster if you saw it today?
I would.
Detective Daney, can you just reiterate for the jury where you found this holster specifically?
It was right in the front area of the driveway or the roadway of 41 Summer Street.
Did you conduct the same method with the holster that you did for the shells in terms of preserving where it was located on the scene?
I did.
Did that include the placard placement?
Yes.
Did that include photographing it?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach? At the moment, it's right. Detective Daney, does this bag also contain the same label, essentially, which the shell casings did in terms of where it was collected, placard, and
Yep. So this white, I know you can't read it, but this white thing is what we call an evidence tag for the Rochester Police Department. It gives us a property number, and then I labeled it as the Black Hawk, which is a company holster, placard number 11.
I know it's ripped open a little bit of the man taken out. And now that you've seen it visually, are you able to confirm that that is the holster that you found
This is.
in front of the Summer Street house?
Yep.
Your Honor, I'm getting a strong candidate to that it is an exhibit. It's Stacy.
Without objection.
No objection. This is now exhibit 8, full exhibit.
Permission to publish through. Other than the holster and the shell casings, Detective, did you collect any other evidence that night?
There was some paperwork and looked like receipts and cigarette pack that was located near the area of the holster that was collected.
So you found the holster. Did you find a gun?
Yes. So at the scene, with the blood going up towards the front steps near 41 Summer Street, in the parking lot of the driveway of 41 Summer Street was a truck that had its, it was like a plow truck, and it had its driver's side door open, and an officer was standing by, kind of making sure no one would go in that. That was told to me that it was identified as Mr. Levesque's truck, and so at that point I had to speak to another detective that was speaking to Mr. Levesque to be able to go into that truck.
Did you ultimately receive permission to go into that truck?
Yep, so I spoke to Detective Garston, who had Mr. Levesque sign a permission to search the truck and its contents there, which granted me the right to go in and look for any additional evidence.
Upon that permission, were you able to locate a firearm inside that truck?
Yeah, so even looking on the outside with the door open, you could see a 9mm handgun with its slide locked back to the rear and an empty magazine that was separate, and they were both sitting on the driver's seat.
So I just want to clarify, if there's the gun and the magazine, are they together at this point?
On
When you
scene,
saw it on the
they're next to each other. The magazine is not inserted into the magazine well.
Thank you for clarifying. I think I may have misheard. Your Honor, I would like to show the witness of the marked state exhibit 5 for ID. I'll show you what is marked as State's exhibit 5 for ID. This has been rendered safe by all involved personnel
It has.
in this particular matter. I'm not going to hand the box over to you. I'm just going to show you. Do you recognize the firearm in this box?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize the firearm in this box?
Both from photographing it, if we could look back at photos and see the serial number, as well as the fact that the box has the property, and I see the property tag as well. As the property tag, the evidence tape, and signature as well.
And I only mentioned about the gun. The gun is not the only item in here. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
What else is in here?
There is a magazine for the gun.
Are you able to tell visually by looking at it if the magazine is empty?
Yes, I am.
Is this the condition in which you found both the gun and the magazine at the time?
It is.
Understanding that it was not so tight to the box.
Right. It was just in the condition it was sitting on the driver's seat.
Thank you, Detective. Your permission to publish the report.
Just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, so this has been by agreement, it was a full exhibit, it was going to be a full exhibit. Just so you understand the protocol down the road, this weapon will not be sent back to you like all the other exhibits to the jury room. This is the one type of exhibit we don't do that with. If, because it is a full exhibit, if at any point you wanted to inspect it more carefully or see it, we would arrange to have it brought back into the courtroom and have you brought back into the courtroom to look at it. But just for security purposes, we don't allow it. Floor. Yes, you can publish it to the jury.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, this is Massachusetts Exhibit 5.
Thank you.
Detective Daney, did you discover anything else in the defendant's truck relating to a firearm while you were searching it?
There was a loaded 9mm magazine separate in a black backpack.
When you say separate, can you tell us where you found that?
I believe that was in the back area, so not in the front two seats, in a backpack.
Did you attempt to collect any additional non-firearm evidence from this truck?
I did. So looking at the truck, it had a series of wires, and I noticed what looked like a camera from the rearview mirror that was pointed out towards the hood. I know that sometimes it's typical of people that are plowing to record, and so I looked and saw that it had a SD card slot, and so that camera system was taken in hopes that there would be some video on there.
Did there ultimately end up being any video that was retrievable?
No, after a search warrant was granted, the extraction showed there was nothing, no recordings of anything. So, just
Did
wasn't.
you collect any other recordings from the defendant's property?
I did, not from the truck.
Not from the truck. Can you tell us where you did collect it from?
Yep, so Detective Garson also said that Mr. Levesque had granted permission to obtain I think it was a Night Owl DVR system, which was the surveillance cameras for 41 Summer Street. We were told that there was a system inside the house at 41 as well as the garage. Myself and Detective Livingstone were able to retrieve the DVR system from the garage because the door was unlocked, but we were unable to, at the time on scene, grab the DVR system from the house because it was locked and no one was answering.
So that night specifically, on April 4th, is that DVR video the last piece of evidence you were able to collect that night?
Myself, yes.
Yourself. Did you conduct any other investigation that night? Did you speak to
Yep, so upon bringing evidence back to the station and logging it into our evidence lockers, I found that Mr. Levesque's daughter was in the station lobby with officers and hadn't been formally interviewed.
Without getting into the specifics of that interview, did you ultimately conduct an interview?
An interview was conducted with Detective Livingstone and I and Kira Levesque.
Did that specific interview kind of conclude your investigation for that night specifically?
Yes, it did.
Did that conclude your investigation overall?
No, it did not.
Can you tell us a little bit about the next investigative steps that you took?
The next steps, I believe, was Detective Livingstone and I responded to Boston Medical Center upon hearing that the victim, Kyle Violette, had been transported all the way to Boston for his injuries.
And again, without getting into specifics, when you arrived at Boston Medical, were you able to speak with anyone that was there?
Yep, and I was able to speak to Kyle's wife, Angela LaChance, his mother, Cindy Glenn, his daughter, Kendra Violette, and his son, Kylan Violette, was there, but he's a juvenile, and so we didn't speak to him at that time.
Were you able to speak with Kyle when you were there?
I was not.
Why not?
He had a breathing tube down. He was very heavily medicated. He was conscious, per se, that he could moan maybe in pain, but he wasn't able to talk to us at all.
Would it have been functional for you to even attempt to interview him at that point?
No, there would have been no interview.
Is that the only time you went down to Boston Medical?
It is not.
Can you tell us about the next time you went down?
So when I first went down that time, though, I did photograph his injuries, and then we responded back at a later date because Kyle had a bullet that was extracted from his face.
And you mentioned the photographs. I believe it's already been public, admitted as full exhibits. They are 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, and 23.
Counsel.
Danny, Maria, my previous question. You mentioned you took some photographs. Would you recognize those photos that showed them to you?
I would.
Some of those photos at all. Do you mind just taking a look at those actions? Are these photos familiar to you?
They are.
How do you recognize these photos?
These are photos that I took and uploaded to the case from Mr. Violette on the date that we went to Boston Medical Center.
Is this the first time you went to Boston Medical?
First time, yep. First time meeting Kyle himself.
Your Honor, I move that this all be admitted as full exhibits as 24, 19, 20, 21, 22.
If I could just have a quick inspection.
Yes. So just to be clear, 19 to 20.
Yes.
So 19 always.
I think that was the top one that has been previously used.
These may be admitted without objection.
So no objection. Exhibits 19 through 24 are full exhibits. Thank you.
Detective Daney, is this the extent of all of the photos you took
No,
that day? If you could estimate how many pictures you took, would you be able to do that?
I'd say maybe 30 that day.
Did some of those photos include pictures of the victim in this case's genitalia?
Yes,
Would note that we have not. Did you recognize those photos in the exhibits that I showed you?
yes,
I'm sorry, I want to clarify. The pictures of the genitalial pictures, were those included in the pictures that I showed you?
no.
Did you want to publish these?
Yes, Your Honor, may I publish to the jury?
Yes, you may.
Would you mind giving me a hand?
Detective Daney, we discussed this very briefly.
My preference is if you're going to be showing the exhibits, we don't ask questions unless they're about the exhibit.
Understood, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't want to multitask.
And again, these will be visible back in your deliberation room once that begins. Thank you. Thank you, Carmen. Detective Daney, can you tell us about your second trip down to Boston Medical?
We had been notified, I believe, by either a family member or even the medical staff that there was a bullet that had been extracted from what was believed to be Kyle's face. And so we went down to retrieve that piece of evidence.
Did you ultimately collect that bullet?
We did.
Detective Daney, I'm going to hand you a pair of gloves.
Thank you.
Detective, I'm going to show you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 15 for identification. Having gone through your process of tracking and labeling evidence a few times at this point, can you tell us, based on the label on the outside of this box, what is within?
Yep, this is Rochester Police Department property label. And it says bullet from left side of Kyle Violette's face.
Is that how you would have labeled?
That's what I labeled it.
Would you mind opening that box? I'm going to pause you right there, Your Honor. I do move that this yet be stricken and admitted as a full exhibit. This is State's 15.
That's without objection.
No objection, that's a full exhibit, thank you.
Thank you. Detective Daney, can you tell us about what you're looking at right now?
Yeah, this it's a biohazard bag, and then it is a clear container with what looks like fragmented bullet, and the label says Kyle Violette, 4/5/2024. Gives some of his information as well as the doctor.
Is this the condition in which you received or obtained the bullet?
This is how we received it, and then we packaged it.
I just want to clarify, when you say this is how you received it, are we including the plastic bag that is?
Yeah, this is how the medical staff handed it over to us.
Thank you. Your Honor, permission to publish the jury. So Detective Daney, after you, and I apologize, did you go down to Boston Medical yourself the second time?
No, I went with Detective Livingstone as well.
Thank you. So after you and Detective Livingstone returned from Boston Medical the second time, did that conclude your investigation in this case?
It did not.
Can you tell us what the next investigative steps that you took were?
I'd have to look at my report. I believe I got a new copy of a video from Angela LaChance at that point.
Would you like to take a look at your report?
That would be great.
Detective, we discussed reports a little bit earlier, but just kind of to review, did you write this report closer in time to the investigative steps that you took than we are today?
I did.
Would it be an accurate representation of the day you took certain steps and what steps those were?
It would.
And would it help refresh your recollection?
It would.
Thank you.
Nice to have,
This is, yes, 167 to 169.
Thank you.
Thanks. Did you want the previous steps too, or for?
After the hospital.
Okay.
Does that help refresh your recollection?
It does.
All right, can you tell us what those next steps were, what that next piece of your investigation was?
So we had previously applied for, like I said, we had seized the DVR systems from 41 Summer Street. We had to apply for a search warrant to actually review the contents of those. So we did that, that was granted, and on the 16th I began the review of those video systems.
Do you recall how many videos you obtained?
I'd have to look. There's a series of different video angles from the garage, the front, as well as the...
Understood. Would seeing a copy of the report
Sure.
help aid in your recollection? Same page as counsel.
Sorry about that. So I have it listed as camera 1 pointing from the side of 41 Summer Street, and then camera 2 pointing from the front steps of 41 Summer Street.
Does that refresh your recollection?
It does.
Videos that you retrieved and viewed?
Yep.
Of the two videos, did you view both of them?
I did.
Would you be able to recognize and identify them for the jury if we played them for you?
Yes.
Your Honor, I believe we will. Pardon me, yes.
May we briefly approach?